All right, here we are again. Welcome to the Culture Couch. Emil and Jez. Now, this week, Woz has taken a bit of a holiday, a public holiday. He's gone 19.9 kilometres from his house, I believe.
You need
Is that the rules down there in Melbourne, Murph?
I think so, mate. No one's really sure what the rules are because, to be frank, it's all over the place and we're absolutely sick of it. We are sick of it.
That's a Culture Couch live by itself, that one. But we've got a replacement today, one of our CEOs, which we've been working with over the last 4 to 6 weeks, Alison Myram. So thanks, Alison, for coming on. We're really excited about you jumping into this conversation. And I'm a little bit concerned, boys, because I was led to believe Alison's a Swan supporter, but she has got the Cats gear on today.
Go Cats.
Run me through that. Go Cats. And Murph, I'd be remiss of me not to mention Leeds as well, or you to mention Leeds as well.
Oh, yes, mate. Last Saturday night, I got up at 1 o'clock in the morning to watch Leeds, the mighty Leeds, take on Salford. And at 3 o'clock, they won by 1 point from a drop goal from the captain. It was a magnificent evening. I had to celebrate on my own in the dark, Rizzy. But congratulations to Richard Agar and the boys, Kev, and a special shout out to Robbie Burrows. He's a teammate of the guys. He's suffering from a really serious disease, and the boys really they had big signs for Robbie. And good luck to Robbie and his family, and congratulations to the Leeds boys.
That's well done, well said, Murph. Absolutely. Now we're going to jump in with a bit of a sporting theme this weekend. So I picked a couple of questions that do have that theme around sport. Given it's the grand final for AFL and obviously NRL this weekend, it's a huge one. So the first question's from Emily. She says, I love where I work and the environment, but I must say I struggle on a Monday as I don't know much about sport and everyone seems to be talking about it. And I guess it is really prevalent, isn't it? And particularly this weekend, because I'd imagine if you rock up to work on a Monday, with your AFL or NRL or both, you'll be talking about sport. So, Alison, I might throw it to you. How would you address that question to Emily?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, Rosie. And I think there's so many lessons for us to learn from sport to take into business. To watch sport, to understand the rules of sport, get involved in the conversation, watch it, learn it. When I was at university, my best friend said to me, I'm going to teach you the rules of every sport. And he did. The only one I can't get into is soccer. But what I love about it is I watch the strategy, I watch the teamwork, I watch the culture, because there's so much to learn from that to bring back into the working environment.
Yeah, I guess it's something we live and breathe, boys, isn't it? It's certainly something I've been involved in sport for many, many years, and obviously I know a lot about it. But the similarities, and I think what Alison's saying is absolutely right, isn't it? You've got to be careful. If you're not involved in those Monday conversations, you've got to be careful you're not missing a lot of the tips around teamwork and strategy and what the coach did, et cetera, et cetera. Murph, I'll get you to pick up on that point as well.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to it. I guess there's a correlation for me between sport and business, and there are a lot of correlations, there's no doubt, particularly around the team stuff. I think also the truth about it is, Emily, in this case, sport is just another part of your culture. So you adjusting to or learning a little bit about what's going on in the sporting world will just enhance your relationships with your workmates. So it's picking up Alison's point, if you learn a little bit more about football and you know who people support, you can have a bit of a conversation with them and you'll get to know each other better, because what will happen is you'll start to have those little chats, which will then lead into a more meaningful conversation, which will then help performance. So it's just grab sport. Emily, I know you don't like it. Learn some rules, find out who barracks for who, find out a little bit about each team, and then use that as a weapon or a tool to help you develop better relationships with your workmates. And I think what you'll find is that you and the team will perform better because of your stronger relationships, even though you don't like sport. So get into it, Emily.
It's a great point. It is a really, really good point, Merv. And I'll throw that to you, Emil, because it's almost the icebreaker, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because often I don't like talking about sport on a Monday, but you sort of think, well, I have to because I want to engage with person X or person Y. And the opening line might be, yeah, gee, the Cats did well on the weekend. So I think there's this misconception that everyone loves talking about sport.
Yeah.
And often when I would do it, there would be a means to an end around why I'm doing it.
Yep.
And it's a really good point that Murph makes, Emil, about that relationship piece and the extension of that conversation and where it goes.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had this journey when I was building Aussie X over here in Canada. It was for the first 3 or 4 years of the business, it was just young Australian blokes. That's the whole entire organization. And then as we started to move into different areas, we brought in a lot of females, and they were fantastic for the business. But we had to change the way we were operating. And as a leader, I had to change the structures by which we were operating as well to be more inclusive. Because there were a couple of sessions there on a Monday morning where I'm looking around and going, well, the girls are over here and the guys are over here. And we just didn't want that. We wanted an inclusive culture. So I think there's a responsibility for the leaders as well to make sure that when we are connecting inside of the company, there are opportunities to share. So we did things like at the start of the week, we would set our outcomes, but then we'd have a bit of a show and tell, and we'd take it in turns, and each person would talk about an interest. And it was fascinating for us because everyone had different interests. Some were in individual sports. Some of the girls were dancers, were very, very high level. So we were just intrigued by the amount of stretching and all the great things they did there with a big focus on their individual sports. So for me, it's really, as a leader, looking at it, how do we build a structure where we're inclusive, and also if there is an interest that's embodied by the group, ask questions and get involved, but make sure we reverse it the other way. It can't just be Emily asking questions about sport. The team has to be reciprocal. That's how I found it anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, great point. And I think I'm going to give Emily a starting point because in most of our workshops, Murph and Emil, we've done over the last 6 or 8 months, I've recommended to everyone to see The Last Dance. It's a show about the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson. And it's absolutely not just about sport. So if you wanted a starting point, Emily, to get involved in sport, but really seeing what a high-performing team looks like, seeing what culture looks like, I'm going to give you a bit of homework, Emily, and get you to watch the Last Dance. It's enjoyable, and maybe you can shoot me a text and let me know how you go. So we're going to go to Kevin now, and we're going to go to the next question. Again, a bit of a sports flavour for this week's episode. What are some of the common traits with great leaders in great sporting teams, and do they spill over into business as well? Murph, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Yeah, mate, the truth is absolutely that, great leaders are consistent. They understand who they are, what they stand for. They communicate well. So you have all that. And we did actually an exercise with one of our clients, one of the Deloitte teams recently, where I asked them each to go away and research their favourite team. Didn't have to be sport. Yeah. And come back and tell us about them and why they were so good. And the common trait that they all came up with was they all changed the game.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form, they did something which actually took the field that they were in to the next level. And it was a really interesting conversation. So I think there's lots of different traits and lots of correlations that you can relate between sport and business. But the one that I took out of that was that the great leaders and great sporting teams actually make a difference by changing the way things are done. And in some ways, I'm interested to hear Alison talk about that, because I know that she's having a major impact in her sector and doing an amazing job changing the way work is being done.
And I think on that, Alison, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you typically start to change things, people don't like change. They just don't like it. So the CEO has to really stay the course. And I think it's a great point that Murph makes, that great leaders make great change, and you're a great leader that's making great change at the moment. Who are your role models that you perhaps looked up to, and how are you finding staying the course? I guess that's a really relevant point that Murph's brought up.
Yeah, look, it is hard because people do resist change. And what we've done in the construction sector is said, okay, the way we're working is having such a detrimental effect on people's health and well-being, and the industry is unsustainable, and it's also not inclusive to the female population.
Yep.
So we need to change it. This is the plan. We had a very clear strategy, and we've stuck to the strategy through thick and thin. And when they, when we get attacked or people are negative, I go to our sites and I see the joy on the people's faces, and I see the tangible impact we're having, and I know we're on the right course. So I get, it's like that adrenaline hit that you need to keep going, to know that you're making a difference. And we've got a really clear purpose of where we want to get to. So it's staying true to that purpose and checking in. But when you see people's lives changing, it's pretty hard to not get invigorated by that and want to go further. And if I think about the All Blacks, my husband left New Zealand when he was 2. He is a staunch All Black supporter. So that cult following, that belief in a team, if you could translate that into a business, imagine how powerful it would be.
Yeah.
I'll ask you a question. Does it get lonely when you're trying to make changes? Like, how do you counteract that?
It's enormously lonely. How do I counteract that? When people send me compliments or emails to say you did this well or you did that well, I keep them. And I reread them when I'm having a bad day. And I've got a really good support network around me that if I can say to them, this happened, is it an attack on me, the company? They set me on the right course, give me a hug and set me off again. But leadership is lonely, yeah.
Yeah, and do you have a good leadership team? Do they support you?
I have a fantastic leadership team. They're enormously supportive, and they all believe, we employed for culture in the organisation. We didn't employ for technical skills. We can teach technical. Yep. I can't teach culture. So where they haven't fitted, and before I met Ruzi, we actually had the poor Ruse, no dickheads policy in the business plan.
I remember that.
And we have stayed true to it because it's so powerful. If someone gets in and destroys your culture, your company's destroyed.
I think I'll pick up on that too, Murph, and maybe hand over to you, Emil, because what Murph's saying is right, and a great response, Alison. But the beauty of a sporting team is they do support each other when things get really, really tough. And we potentially don't see that, Emil, as much in the corporate world, do we? I mean, there's a tendency to sort of run and hide's not the right term, but there's a tendency. And I would say one of the great strengths of great leaders in sporting teams is continually bringing people back together, and continually reminding this is us, this is our team. Yep. And I hope through the conversation we're having today with Alison and you guys is that the corporate world remembers we are in this together. It is something we can do. How often do you have to remind your leadership teams and the companies you're working with, Emil, that they are in it together?
Yeah. And I always say to my clients, when the team say to you as a leader, enough, like they repeat what you've been like drumming. I remember, Jez, when you started working with us at Aussie X again with extraordinary impact, the day that I knew it was working was the day the team, enough, Emil. We know it's extraordinary impact. They started to take the mickey out of me.
Yeah. And
Jez, you told me when that happens, you're winning. And I'm like, cool, because you might be thinking it, because as a leader, you're thinking about it all the time. Like it's just day and night you wake up, but maybe the staff are not. So drumming it and beating that drum is just essential. And then there's new people that come in. And so 1 or 2 new people into an organization of say 30 or 40 is of quite a large percentage that if they're not all in, they can be the ones grabbing the group and saying, now let's go this direction. So beating that drum, and because when you asked the question, the first thing I wrote on a piece of paper was brand. We know what we stand for. We beat that drum and we make our decisions under pressure according to our brand. And we never go off brand, particularly when the time is the most stressful and we're getting the most flack and outside noise and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's great, Emil, and agree. And can I just build on this weekend's sporting thing with the grand finals, because I've worked with both captains and coaches, and like if you had to find two guys that love their team more than Trent Cotchin and Joel Selwood, you would struggle.
Yeah, right. That's awesome.
And I've heard both of them talk to their teams and use the word love and brotherhood, and it's like it gives me goosebumps now just thinking about how much these guys care for their teammates. And when you talk about Team Rizzy, I think if you can get that sort of love for each other, and it's not romantic love, it's just care love. Yeah. And translate that into a business sense is what Alison's sort of saying, like where everyone buys in, and what Emil's saying, everyone buys in. It's like it's almost beyond words, because
it is.
People perform to levels which they didn't previously believe they could. And it's quite amazing, and that's why I'm really looking forward to tomorrow night's game, just to watch these two guys and how they bring their teams with them. And hopefully it'll be a draw.
You would say that.
Play game next week, or now we go to extra time, don't we? So
we do, I think.
But I think you're right, Murphy. It is fascinating when you look at I don't know Penrith as well, but when you look at Melbourne Storm, Geelong and Richmond, with all due respect to Penrith, as I said, they haven't probably been at the forefront as much. And someone asked me a question I did at the grand final, ironically, grand final lunch. And the question was, has culture become more important through the hub and through its sporting teams? And the answer is clearly yes.
Yeah.
Clearly yes. Because a lot of the other talent-based teams we've seen have just fallen by the wayside. I mean, how the Giants can miss the 8 is just incredibly extraordinary. But to Alison's point around, the pressure and being seen as somewhat of an individual, we would always encourage the corporate world to get on board with each other, to really support each other, to really say, no, look, love what you're doing, Alison, stick with it. If I can do any more for you, we will. And we saw that, with the really cool workshop we did with the crew, Alison, was so powerful, wasn't it? When we started to listen to the crew talk to you, how they spoke to, and that was really powerful.
Yeah, it was incredible. Absolutely. And you're stronger together. You can achieve greatness when you all work for the same end cause.
Yeah. Yeah, look, and we could probably talk about, I don't know, with this grand final, it's got us all a bit hyped up here. Leeds have won last week. I actually don't even know I'm barracking for it.
I've got workouts.
It's grand final, but we're all pretty pumped up today. Thank you very much, Alison. Fantastic.
That's great, Alison.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Emil, thanks, mate. And who are you going to go for?
To be honest, mate, I don't know. Like, I'd love Sel to be able to say he was a premiership captain, and I'd love Gary to go out with a premiership, and Harry Taylor. So I don't know. Either way, I'm a winner. So I tell you what I can say is go Storm.
Yeah. Good luck to the Storm as well. Well, thanks very much, and we'll see you next time on the Culture Couch Live.